Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Carmen Mateos. I'm from the Create Up Championship team. So, before we start this wonderful session and before I introduce our guest speaker today, I would love to welcome all the new participants that join us today as a first time. And I would love to walk you a little bit about the competition to give you a better understanding of the Create Apps Championship. So next, please. Christina. Okay, so the Create Apps Championship is an initiative from Create App, the Dubai Chamber of Digital Economy. This is the third edition of the Create App Championship. It's a global competition under the Create Apps in Dubai initiative. It was launched by His Highness Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, and the program is designed to advance digital innovation and position Dubai as a leading global hub for mobile app development. So, if next, Christina, please. So, over the last two editions, you can see here some of the pictures from the previous editions. We received more than 5,800 applications from 132 countries. So, it is not a local competition at all. So, anyone around the world who has an interest in Dubai can apply. Last year, only we helped develop over 340 prototypes. Next, please. So if you are looking to set up a business in Dubai, or you already have a company and you are looking into digitalizing further, you can apply. So anyone who has a cool idea for a mobile application that you think that will work well in Dubai, you can submit your application. And if you are choosing one of the four winners, you will receive an investment of $150,000. So there are four categories that you can apply. I will not go into too much detail. We will be sharing the info page of the competition. But the four categories are the youth category, innovative, impactful, and this year we have the industry of the year, this longevity. So I don't want to further delay the start of the session. Next. So please, for those who just joined the competition, scan this QR code and you will join the WhatsApp channel and you will be update of the news. Update basically it's just a channel for announcement. So without any further delay, I would love to introduce to Pooja that is today with us. She's one of the winners of the first edition and she's an expert in UX UI. So Pooja, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. My name is Pooja, as Carmen said, and I'm really excited to be with you guys today to talk a little bit about prototyping and building a killer mobile prototype. Um, as Carmen alluded to, I have expertise in product and tech for about 25 years now. Maybe if you go to the next slide, I can kind of just walk through a little bit of my journey so you can understand kind of maybe why I'm the person who's talking to you about this. So I started my career way back when. I'm going to date myself here. I'm from Canada and I worked for a startup back in the day, building their tech solutions that were quite global actually at the time. We kind of connected on a customer service basis, some technical solutions, moved to the UK to open up their satellite offices, and then was back in Canada and joined Microsoft. So I went from a startup to a giant. I built products at Microsoft that millions of people used on a daily basis, mostly on the consumer side. And then I was recruited to the US to their headquarters on the west coast of the US, where I continued to work for Microsoft for about 9 years. And then I ended up doing product and tech at Expedia, worked very closely on their mobile app as well as a bunch of other products that they built. And about 5 years ago, I moved to Dubai, headed product at Careem. And then from there, I went on to head product at Kitopi, which is another one of this region's unicorns that you may all be familiar with. And after that, I decided, you know what, there's a lot of great opportunity for more companies, startups like yourselves, that really want to gain insights and experience on how to really build great product, which is UX and UI are a key component of that in the region. And so I decided to offer my services more broadly with my own company, Products Global. And in that journey, I've been mentoring a bunch of different companies and working with a bunch of different ecosystem players here. So DIFC Innovation Hub, the Dubai DFDF, In5, Hub 71, Techstars. I do a lot of similar coaching and mentoring for them. And in that journey, I also met my co-founders for Takeem. And we actually, I guess what's most relevant here, and maybe if you move to the next screen, is we actually entered the Create Apps Championship back in, I think, the first version, early 2024, and we were actually one of the winners of the 4 categories of Best Advanced App. And that's why it's most relevant to our conversation here is because we won this from our pitch, yes, and our business model and everything that goes into it, but also from our prototype itself. So this is kind of where I want to kind of switch gears and talk to you guys about, why your prototype is really important. It's sort of your make or break moment. So if you move to the next slide, and I know I have limited time, so I'm going to just try to go through these quickly, and hopefully if you have some time, I'll open up for any questions you have. So what exactly is a mobile app prototype? So it is an interactive simulation or early sample version of your app that demonstrates its core functionalities and user experiences before full development begins. What does that mean? That means that you have something that you're not investing all of that time, money, and effort into building as a working app that you're necessarily going to download and use, but it actually is used to demonstrate what are those key elements of the story that you're going to create through an interactive model that people can click on and you can click on to showcase your product. So if you go into the next slide, um, I referred earlier to how your prototype is your make or break moment. And, in the startup ecosystem, whether you're pitching today to, GCC or global investors, your prototype isn't really just a nice to have. It's really the thing that's going to be that moment where they're going to actually be able to see what you're talking to about them in a very tangible way. And, I personally sat in rooms with investors across the region, even international investors, and they're really not just looking at your idea anymore. They're looking at also your ability to execute. So it's a great way for you to demonstrate how you execute using your prototype. A lot of founders I found, when they think of a prototype, it's not just, their screens coming together to show how it works. It's actually your story that's put together and it's a way to prove to whoever you're showing this prototype to that you really understand your users, your market, and it also really demonstrates your vision. And when you're especially thinking about kind of who are the people who are going to invest or select your product of all products in a competition. It's really investors, at least I know from data I've seen, that investors typically decide within the first 2 minutes whether or not they're interested. And so your prototype really has to demonstrate within that really short time frame and capture their interest. I also found that research I did showed that 67% of funding decisions are really heavily influenced by how well you demonstrate your product. And by demonstrate, it is again really much showing and giving that tangible view of what your product is through your prototype. So the competition is fierce, as you know, out there. Investors and all are becoming very sophisticated. They want to see what you can build. They're not just looking for you talking about it. And your prototype really serves as a proof of that. Okay, so today I really want to spend time going to make sure that your prototype tells the right story because the story is what's really important in your prototype. So if you go to the next slide, one golden rule just to start off with is, as I mentioned, I'm just reiterating this, you're building for the story, not the features. In fact, my co-founder and I, we have a thing in our business where we never use the F word, which is features. If you say features, you put a dirham in a bucket and somebody gets the dirhams at the end of the year to go on holiday or whatever. But we try to stick to the story, the big picture, the experiences you're trying to create and not talk features, because as soon as you start talking features, you start building for features and even your prototype becomes a collection of features. Okay, so let's go into the next slide. 3 core questions. that you really want to ask. It's really you know uh the first you have to really think about these core questions in this order. I would recommend. So first, what problem are you solving, right? Investors need to really feel, and anyone seeing your pitch needs to really feel the pain that your users feel. Second, how does your solution work? This is really where the magic comes in. We call it the aha moment, which is the moment which makes somebody say, wow, that's really clever. Okay, I really understand what you're trying to accomplish here. And the third question, core question, is really, why now? What's changed in the market, or what makes this the right time for you to be introducing your solutions? And everything in your prototype should really ladder up to answering these three questions. If a screen or any of the features, so to speak, in your experience, in your prototype, don't serve the story that you're telling, that are answering these three core questions, then I encourage you to be ruthless and cut it out altogether. Because your goal when you build a prototype isn't to show what your app can do. It's to show really why your app must be there, why it must exist. And so if you really put that lens on it, you can really understand and be really critical with what needs to be in your prototype and what doesn't. Okay. So now I'm going to go into kind of more tactically, what you absolutely should do when you're building your prototype. So on the next slide, you want to basically start with your core user journey, and then you want to keep it really, really tight. A user journey, when you think about what is that path that your users are going to take, whether it's a happy path or the path that's, not the happy path, it's going to be very complicated. So it's really about whittling it down and keeping it tight. I suggest 5 to 7 screens maximum. And you want to pick not all of the many flows, but you want to map out that one flow that really demonstrates that value proposition that you want to go to market with. So if I give you an example, maybe like for a food delivery app, which we're all very familiar with in this region, that flow could be, browse, select, checkout, and then track your delivery. If you're in the fintech space, for example, maybe the flow is a little bit different. Maybe it's onboard, link your bank account, make your first transaction. And if you think about what I just said, it sounds really simple. It's just one journey, and you want to execute it perfectly in your actual prototype. Second, you want to use real data. And I really can't stress this enough. When you see oftentimes prototypes or Figmas and stuff, they use lorem ipsum or some kind of Latin word as placeholders. Um, or they don't have images. They just have sort of like those blank, I'm sure you've all can see that squiggly line image that are placeholders, or for usernames, they use something like John Doe or something. But when you think about your audience, and investors specifically are very detail oriented. So if they see what looks like fake data that doesn't make sense, they wonder what else is fake. So use realistic content as much as possible. And that realistic content, if you think about it, should match your target market. Even if it's languages. So for example, if you're in a bilingual country or creating for a bilingual country, those language combinations also should be reflected in your prototype. Third, you want to really make it interactive if that serves the audience. So sometimes, depending, and I have a slide that talks a little bit later about this, depending on where you are, you could have clickable wireframes in Figma. Other times you can have tap through prototypes that really feel alive. And these are the kinds of, if you're going into a meeting, for example, where you say, hey, you want to look at our prototype, it's where you can actually hand over your phone, and whoever it is, the investor, whoever partner that's looking at it, they can tap a button and something could happen. Tools like Figma and Protopie, and even, coding prototypes in React Native or whatever, they can make your vision very tangible, and whoever your audience is can actually interact with it and get a different feel for it if that's the right time and place for it. Fourth, I would say design for the actual device you'll demo on, assuming you're demoing on a device. Because I've seen sometimes founders, they create beautiful prototypes, and then when they put it on iPhone, they look terrible, or it's in like the lighting and what the room they're in, it doesn't really showcase their wonderful prototype. So test on the actual device, and if you can, in the right conditions as well, where you're going to be presenting. The fifth is showing that wow moment in the first 30 seconds. Now, that wow moment, You want to really, it's like that aha moment I talked about. The wow is where they actually see it happen. The aha is where they kind of get it. They're like, oh, okay, I understand what you're trying to do. The wow is where that you're actually proving it to them. And if you use that rule of showing it within 30 seconds, it really helps sort of them see immediately why your app is different. So you're not making them wait to see why it's different. And then the last one, finally, that I recommend is including one moment of delight. So that could be like a smooth animation or like a clever micro interaction. It really just it's a very subtle way to show that you really care about the craft. And in markets, depending where you're operating, but certainly in the GCC where premium experiences matter, it signals quality. So it's a very kind of psychological way of signaling quality. So those are kind of the do's to make a really killer prototype. Now let's move on to what you shouldn't do, the don'ts. So if you go to the next slide. Um, so um, the don'ts, these are kind of a collection of don'ts that I've seen kind of not work for prototypes. So I'll walk you through one by one, and I'm sure there's a few others, but these are kind of the highlights that I think are more important to think about first. So don't try to prototype absolutely everything in your roadmap, right? It's tempting. You want to show investors everything you've planned. Resist that. It dilutes your message. It makes you look unfocused. And like I talked about that single flow, just focus on that single one quick happy flow first, and you'll grasp their attention. They'll get that wow moment. It'll really hit home. Secondly, don't use, if you can avoid, generic stock photos or template designs. If you think about investors, especially, they've seen thousands of pitches and they can spot a template, from a mile away. So your prototype really needs to feel like it belongs to your brand, to your market, to your users. It has to be very unique to you and your business. And then third, don't ignore what we call platform conventions. So if you're building for iOS, then follow Apple's guidelines when you're creating a prototype. If it's Android, respect their material design. Investors will notice, like when you try to reinvent basic navigation for no reason, it'll signal to them that, this is not a realistic view, and it also will signal that you might not understand users or, the basics of the technology you're building. On the fourth, don't add features just to look impressive. I've seen in fact, over the last 2 years, I would say, in the consulting work I do for startups, I've seen founders add AI chatbots and blockchain integrations and AR features that have nothing at all to do with their core value. And, I always have to kind of talk them down from that. If that doesn't reflect your core value, it doesn't scream innovation. It almost screams desperation. And whoever you're pitching to, if they're knowledgeable, they will pick up on that as well. So it'll work against you. And then fifth, this one is another slightly subtle one, but it's also important, is don't forget to show offline states or loading states and error handling. I know these are kind of bigger terms, but they're subtleties that you need to think about that, because there are going to be times when your app is going to take a while to process what's happening, or an error might happen, or it may show that it's offline. And if you're showing these states in your prototype, when somebody hits a dead end doing the prototype, these details prove to whoever's looking at the prototype that you've thought through what happens in the real world, like real world experiences. So, a polished error message, for example, it shows maturity in your thinking as somebody who's creating a founder who's creating a product or an app that's going to be used by a lot of people. And then finally, the sixth one is, never, ever, ever, ever demo without rehearsing. I don't care how good you think you are or how good everyone says you are. Technology fails, Wi-Fi drops, your hands shake, you get nervous. So rehearse until you can do it in your sleep. I don't know if you guys know Murphy's Law, but Murphy's Law is undefeated. It means if it's going to go wrong, it's gonna happen, right? That's Murphy's Law. So those are my key don'ts on advice on making sure that you don't kill your chances with your prototyping demos. So if we move on to the next slide. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about something I referred to earlier, which is clickable wireframes versus tap-through interactive prototypes. So clickable wireframes, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Figma. Some of you may also be familiar with AI tools that are out there now where you can build designs. I'm talking about those in a couple more slides. But let's talk about clickable wireframes. These are screens linked together with hotspots, which means that, you know, if you click here, it's designed in a way that if you click on this button, for example, it'll show you the next screen. So it's very much engineered clicks to create a experience. They're basic transitions, so one will slide, one will dissolve, slide in and out, and they're static. It's not dynamic. And then you've got tap through interactive, which means that, you know, it includes what I talked about with those little, if you want to put in a little, you know, wow moment of animation or micro interactions. And it responds to buttons. It shows buttons clicking. It shows states animating. It feels more alive. It's closer to a real app experience. It's just more designed that way. And it can be done with advanced prototyping. Now, when should you use which? And that's what I want to talk about in the next slide, because it's important to understand because there's a different level of commitment and investment that goes into each. So I would say for contests and competitions, much like the one that you guys are in, what we're talking about here, you know, a medium high fidelity clickable Figma prototype, the clickable ones are usually perfectly fine because you're going to be presenting and pitching it, right? You're not handing around your phone necessarily for people to click on it and stuff like that. That said, maybe there is going to be a station where you can do that. So you may need a version of that that can be on a station or something that shows that. For if you want to kind of go to an investor, for example, you may want to take that prototype on your phone and as you're talking to them, hand it over to them and walk them through it so that they can actually click on it and see what happens. And it should look polished, right? It shouldn't look like it's just, like I said, lorem ipsum and placeholder images and things like that. When you go into more kind of institutional investors, you know, you want to probably have, I would say, a more product ready feel. So you want to make sure that it is a little bit more than a prototype. If it is a prototype, it's much more advanced prototyping. And I would even say for pre-Series A in this round, you may even have an MVP. For Series A, you definitely have to have an MVP, and that means like a product that has been developed and is out there being used that they can actually click on and use. And then the prototype in this case might be something that you say, hey, our next version is going to have these functionalities, and you can show them the prototype that you're building towards because you already have a product in market. So that's what I would say. And if you're thinking about, well, what should I build? You know, like a clickable prototype Figma or something a little bit more advanced. So if you go to the next slide, I just want to make a comment about AI design tools. So AI design tools are often the elephant in the room because I know many of you might be thinking, well, why would I pay for a design with Figma or get a designer or something when I can use, you know, Galileo AI or UI Wizard for free, for example. It's a couple of examples of AI tools. So I want to give you my honest take, and I'm going to be pretty straight with you because I feel like you deserve that. AI design tools are incredible for startups, right? They're 10 times faster than traditional design processes. Um, you know, they're, I would say, maybe 80 to 90% cheaper. We're talking like maybe $50 a month, maybe, for you to create it on an AI tool versus, I don't know, for 3 to 10,000 for professional prototyping. And you can generate entire app flows and with simple text prompts using these tools, right? Now, would you use them for demonstrating your prototype? Will it give you enough differentiation? I think for rapid concept validation, for example, putting it in front of users and getting validation, these tools are phenomenal because they allow you to test whether an idea has legs and that you can actually absolutely use these kinds of tools to do that. But, and this is a pretty big but, here's what you need to know about the hidden costs. First, like AI tools, they create very generic aesthetics. So, you know, when you take them, they may not look original. When people look at them, they might not see anything that's super differentiated on what you're developing versus what a seasoned UX designer could design, for example. And when your prototype kind of looks like everybody else's, you kind of lost your differentiation when you're prototyping and demonstrating before you even can explain it, right? I personally can spot AI generated design from across the room. And I would assume a lot of investors, because they see these all the time, can also. So that's just something to keep in mind if you decide to go into using AI tools. The other thing I would say, having worked with UX folks for a long time, is AI tools don't do strategic UX thinking. So they generate screens based on patterns that they've learned, as much of AI does, but they don't really understand your specific user journey. They don't really understand your market nuances or your competitive positioning. They can't tell you that your checkout flow, for example, has too much friction, because your users might expect instant gratification or whatever the case may be. And I would also say they potentially could be, especially which is important for our when we're talking about building apps globally, they're weak on localization. So if you're building for multilingual markets, Canada, this region, Arabic English, Canada, French English, Spanish English in some of the Americas, or whatever other language combinations, you do need thoughtful bilingual interfaces, and cultural considerations as well. And AI tools are trained mostly on Western apps, and so they really struggle here. And I guess the last thing I would say as well is, and this is probably more critical for investor meetings, is it has a template feel. Like when investors see an AI generated prototype, they kind of read it as early stage, not ready, still figuring it out kind of thing. And there's a risk of that happening, whether that's fair or not, the perception matters. So my recommendation would be what I call the smart play here, which is use AI tools for speed in your early stages, build it fast, test it with users, validate your concept. But when you're preparing for serious investor conversations and when you're going after, that seed round or approaching institutional investors, invest in refinement at that point. You don't need to rebuild it from scratch. You just take your AI generated foundation and you have an experienced UX or product person polish it, fix the flows, add the proper branding, and personality for your market, optimize for your market, make it feel really premium. And that really gives you the speed and the cost efficacy. But it also helps you polish, and polish what you're presenting here. So again, just think of AI tools as your sketch, not your final painting. And then you get, 70% of the way there incredibly fast. But the last 30%, that's where you really want to differentiate. And that's what people will really notice. Okay, moving on to telling the right story on the next slide. Okay, so I talked a little bit about telling the story. So, the demo, most founders sort of kind of struggle with this part. They demo features, as I talked about, instead of telling the story. So what I've done is I've tried to create a story narrative arc here that could work. So you basically start with the setup. Don't just talk about what's the problem, show them. If you're building, like, for example, I don't know, like a parking app, right? This is the example I had when I generated this story arc for you. So say you're building a parking app, you open your prototype on the map showing maybe a busy downtown area at 8 a.m. with no available spots. So you want to make it really visceral, make it feel real. And then you want to move into showing the conflict. What do people do today? Maybe they circle for 20 minutes, or they pay premium rates, or they're late to meetings. Show that pain point, that painful current state. And really, this is where investors lean in, because, or anyone who's watching it will lean in, because this is anyone who in your audience is going to feel that pain, right? So you really want to get them to feel it. And then after that, you present your solution, right? Your resolution. And this lead up to it makes it almost effortless, right? This is where your prototype really gets to shine. Show how your app solves this in like 30 seconds. But don't just show the transaction, show the emotion, show the relief, the satisfaction. It could be, done through your technology with like maybe a subtle celebratory animation or something like that when they book a spot. All of these are very subtle things that a lot of we do in product very intentionally, because they have psychological triggers that make people really get it. And then finally, you want to kind of show the proof of scale, right? So don't just demo one parking reservation, show the full ecosystem, the history, the safe preferences, if you have a referral program, that kind of thing. So, what you want is people see that this isn't just a one-time transaction, it's a habit you're building with this product. And I'll tell you something else, which I tell, very few people, which is the secret sauce, is that you want whoever your audience is to say, wow, I would use this. Not, hey, this is interesting or a clever idea. You want them to be thinking about their own life. And, when they feel like they could really be using this themselves, that's kind of when you've won them over. And then going to the next slide. Okay, I talked about the first 30 seconds a few times, and I just want to zoom into this a little bit more because this is a critical part, your first 30 seconds. It's whether you either hook your audience or you lose them. What I've seen go wrong oftentimes with founders is they open their prototype on a beautiful logo animation, like some onboarding screens explaining their vision. And then by the time they get to the actual app, their audience is kind of checking their phones at that point. So instead, open on the problem. Really start your demo. Think of it as starting your demo kind of mid-story. For example, right, this is Sarah. She spends 40 minutes every morning finding parking downtown. Watch what happens when she opens her app. And then you do what I like to call tap, tap, boom. She's booked on the spot, done. That's your hook, right? So, what we did there is like, what you did there, what I did there, right, is like we created a character, established their pain, and then showed the solution all in 30 seconds. And, you don't need to have people read about the features, you want them to experience the transformation firsthand. This like really works especially well with this investors because as you can imagine, investors are running between meetings, between pitches, so it shows that you respect their time and you show them sort of your magic immediately, essentially. So it's quite simple, follow the rule, show them, don't tell them. Don't have a screen that says our app connects users to available parking. Just show, how in this case, this user, Sarah, I think her name is, could find parking, and the value explains itself. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. Just wanted to give you a quick checklist that I kind of talked about because now if you followed all of this, you've built an amazing prototype, and now you're ready to kind of go into that meeting. So this is just a pre-demo checklist, and every single item really does matter. So you want to test on the exact device you'll use, not something similar, the exact one. You want to make sure that your prototype works offline or in airplane mode, and don't rely on API connections and internet connections because as I said, Murphy's Law, they could fail you any second. Make sure the basics, your battery is charged if you're demoing on a phone, bring a charger, brightness to 100% so it's visible in meeting rooms, notifications off, that kind of stuff, it kills momentum. Preload all your demo data. Don't type anything live unless it's essential to your story. So pre-filled forms, pre-selected options, all of those kinds of things. Run through your demo at least 3 times in the morning of the meeting. Muscle memory is real. I promise you, your hands, should know where to tap without thinking. And finally, always have a backup plan ready. Record a video of your prototype in action in case something fails. Especially, I'm talking about in investor meetings where you may not get a chance to have another meeting with that person again. You want to come fully prepared. It's being professional, not paranoid. It's just making sure that you're really taking advantage of the opportunity you have in front of you. And on your next slide, what to do after your prototype. I would say, if you've impressed them, great, congratulations. Some things that people aren't prepared for that you should be prepared for, especially when talking to investors. Oftentimes, what happens next in the room is, investors start asking deeper questions. They'll want to see, detailed designs beyond your core flow. That's great. After that, you can pull up your Figma and say, well, this is what would happen and that would happen because you've already hooked them with your prototype. They could ask about your tech stack and, why you made certain decisions around it. They'll want to know maybe if you've done user testing and, to understand, different user segments, they might probe on these kinds of things. So having a really solid product foundation matters here. So your prototype in this case has really served to open the door, for you. But now they're going to want to go into depth. So have your detailed user flows mapped. Miro is a great tool for that. Know why you chose, for example, React Native versus Flutter versus native development, whatever you decided on. Document, your user feedback, even if it's just from like 10 people or so. Show that you've thought through different scenarios. And one thing that I've personally learned, working over the years with startups globally is that, most successful founders, they know basically when to bring in expertise as well, right? So product design, UX strategy are specialized skills. I talked about how there is AI out there, but the difference between a good prototype and a great one can be the difference between getting funded and sometimes going home empty-handed. So this is something to just remember, like I wouldn't, just downplay the importance of it. Like make sure that, proper product and UX strategy is thought of earlier on, before major pitches, because they often outperform the ones where it's where it's not. And there are lots of, product leaders and experts out there and UX experts, that you can tap into for these kinds of things. So, getting help is probably, one of those gaps that if you fill, you'll get the success early on. Okay. Moving on to the next slide. There's some key takeaways here. Just stuff I talked about just for you to I just want to close with you to remember this, to bring it home. So you're building at a very exciting time for startups globally. Investors are really actively looking for the next breakthrough. But investors are also selective and they're sophisticated. They've seen a lot, right? And your prototype, like I said, it's your weapon. So use it wisely, right? And remember these 5 things that we went through, right? One prototype for the story, not the features. Every screen should advance your narrative in this, right? So be very selective. 5 to 7 is enough for your prototype, 5 to 7 screens. Second, your 30 seconds should make or break you, hook them immediately. Third, use real data, real interactions, show real emotions, make your viewers feel, your audience, feel the value. 4, rehearse until it's muscle memory and practice until, the technology disappears and just the story remains. 5, is one focused journey executed brilliant. It really beats, 10 scattered ones every single time. So on the next steps, if you go to the next slide, are very simple. Like literally today, you can define your core user journey if you haven't already, write it down, then be ruthless. I would say cut everything that doesn't serve that story. Get your prototype in front of real users, even if it's just, 5 to 10 people, right? Their feedback is going to be golden. And if you're serious about, winning this competition, that feedback from, your community, not just users, if you can tap into experienced product and UX people who've been in the trenches, that would be also very valuable because the opportunity really is here. The market, I think, is ready and your prototype really just needs to prove that you're ready too. So that's, I think, it. If you go to the next slide. Yeah, so that's everything from me. If there's time, I don't know if there's time, but yeah, go ahead. Thanks.
Sorry, unfortunately, we don't have the
No
time, but
problem.
definitely there, I'm sure there will be so many questions because it was very insightful, Pooja. We are very happy to having you today with us. So thanks a million to join us today. It was wonderful to hear you, not only as an expert, also as a winner, So thanks a lot for joining today. So just for everybody to know, before we kick off the second part, that is the actual workshop, Pooja is available on the mentor circle. So what does it mean is that she's one of the mentors, she's an ambassador. So you can, if you still have questions that we couldn't address today because of the time, please don't hesitate to book because she's available to have one-to-one. So you can have the questions and have Pooja for half an hour only for you. So yeah, she will be more than happy to answer that. Thanks a lot, Pooja. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you once again. So Cristina, Kirin, now is the turn to start. So please, the floor is yours.
Great. So yeah, I'm here today, Cristina, together with Elmo and Kirin. we're not on week 3, we are on week 4. So yeah, just again, a quick reminder of what we'll be doing. So yeah, please make sure that your mic is on mute. If you have questions, I already see you guys are posting them in the chat. We will be using some Mentimeter. We're also doing some AI demos, posting also some prompts in the chat as we go along. So yeah, please pay attention. We are running a little bit behind in time, so we will see that we wrap up punctually at 5 p.m. Dubai time. But just bear with us as we go along, okay? Super. So yeah, today, session 4, we're looking at refining your idea. Last week, we already talked about UX prototypes, and now we're looking at, iteration, the prototype, but also looking further into UI design. So also building upon what Pooja said, but also providing you with a lot of additional insights and details. So the end goal, as a quick reminder of what you will need to submit by December 15th, is, of course, your app business model canvas. So you'll have your submission form and answering all the questions that you see in the canvas. The clickable prototype, so also what Pooja just talked about, and the compelling 5-minute video pitch using the pitch canvas. So yeah, these are all the questions that you'll have to answer in your submission form. And it translates a bit more to this pitch canvas. So you see how the colors match, the light blue, the light purple. So you're really trying to kind of tick off, everything in your 5-minute video pitch, including a 2-minute demo where you demonstrate your app. Super. Just as a small recap of what makes actually a good pitch, indeed have a really good, interesting hook. As Pooja mentioned, those first 30 seconds absolutely count to, get the jury, in this case, not the investors, but the jury, in your case, really interested, engaged. It has to be clear and relatable, personal. You don't have a lot of time, so really every word counts. It has to be super focused, be inspiring. And if you're inspiring and surprising, and this idea is truly yours, and you've worked on this now also for, a few months, it should also be, of course, believable and convincing. And indeed, at the end, have a very concrete ask and a promise of what you will deliver, so it is really easy to say yes to you. If we apply like human-centered design, also in understanding the audience, who is the jury, right? You want to make sure that they're engaged, that they feel, that they understand, that they think, and of course, motivate them to actually do, in this case, to say yes to you. And yeah, it's all about practice, practice, practice. Of course, you have to do it with the video pitch. So you have, you can repeat it as often as you like, but, in the end, practice also beforehand makes perfect. Super. We are going to skip the pitching part for lack of time, but if you do want to practice pitching, I would say either book your mentoring sessions, or next week we'll give the floor again to 1, maybe even 2 people to share their pitches. So yeah, if you really wanted to do it this week, tune in next week, and then you'll have the floor then. Okay, so we're looking at refining your idea. On the business model canvas, we are looking at the solution part. So again, furthering that out, developing it out, really focusing now also on that 2-minute demo. So showing investors or the jury how this idea actually works. At the end of the sessions, what is important for us that you walk away with is understanding, going back a bit into testing, what are the riskiest assumptions, why these are important to test, looking at the assumptions map and test card again, and then really diving into UI design, good app design, and also how to use AI to generate high fidelity clickable prototypes. That being said, exactly, you see it in the flow. So we're looking at an interaction flow, UI design actually here, and then looking at helping you to create that final clickable prototype that you will demo. So a short recap on validation and testing. Also as Pooja said, the earlier we test with real users, the lower the risk of not really hitting your end user's need or desire and solving the problem that they have. So the earlier you test, the lower your risk of not meeting that target. And again, what do we test? So with more UX testing, it's more about, don't testing pixels first, but looking at, do users want this? Can you actually build and deliver it? And is it a sustainable business? So is this something that will also be interested or needed within, the next 5 to 10 years? Is this something that you can really also build upon and iterate further down the line? Is this something that you can also invest in long-term as a company? Again, when we look at what we want to test, we look at surfacing our assumptions on an assumptions map. Here, it's really about first thinking about what are the most critical assumptions that we have about our app. So will users use it? Is this the right flow for them? Is there a need in their market? Is this actually solving the problem that we have? And you map them depending on, is this something that we have high confidence on? So do we really know this, or do we not know this? Then it's low confidence. And if this is proved right or wrong, does this have a really high impact on us or a low impact? And then once you have all your assumptions mapped out, you choose 2 of the riskiest assumptions to test, and you map them out on this test card. So it's really the assumption, you stay on the top, the method, how you will test it, the prototype that you'll use. So probably your low fidelity prototype that you may have made on Figma or Lovable, for instance. The participants, will you do it with live users? Will you do it with your AI persona? What will you actually measure? What do you want to prove? So what is your hypothesis, the threshold? And what will you do if you're wrong? Exactly. And building on that, you can also, of course, stress test with AI. So really also testing with AI, how does your app work? And we would recommend to start a bit broader. So really looking at your insights, iterating first, also based on your AI persona that we developed in the earlier sessions, but also on your competitive benchmark. Want to focus on different, here we say features, and functions, but really also looking at what is the differentiating promise. So what is the USP of your app, and what are the critical assumptions that underlie that? And also, reverse thing, continue prompting it with questions to see if it works or not. So I would just say we'll do this together. And we'll do that using Layla, our persona that we created for ClassPass. And I think here also just one thing that I still want to mention is when we did this at the beginning of the session, we told you, or beginning of, this journey that we went on together, we said, do interviews with real person, do it with AI. But the importance of this research was to really build very valid personas. And these come in really handy now as you want to stress test your app ideas. So the more realistic and the more grounded your persona is in reality, and the more detailed it is, the better insights you would also now get when testing it. So let me see if I can share my screen to the right screen. That should be this one. Let's see if this works. So you should be seeing this. And now we're okay. Okay, so from last week, this is what Corinne showed us, the prototype, right? So something that we now called Sport Hub, that we prompted with Lovable. So we have our prompt here and this really simple, very basic prototype that we had. Here, you just share the link to copy, and I will now see, exactly. We are here. So we're in my ChatGPT, which is German. So it says, was liegt heute an? I uploaded my persona, Layla, here, and I have this prompt. So act as Layla Farsi, 30-year-old product manager living in Dubai, based on this persona profile. I added a bit more concrete details here in what she's doing, and then continue prompting it as stays strictly in the characters Layla. Your goal is to stress test the assumptions I give you. Do not assume they're correct. Instead, actively look for limitations, risks, and conflicts with your real behavior as Layla. I'll post this into the chat in a second, so you can then really see this all. What I'll share is a prototype of an app called FitPass. Well, we're actually called Sport Hub now. There we go, and 2 assumptions. For each assumption, I would like to get a gut reaction, a reality check, and also a score in confidence. So how important this is, and briefly explain, that score. I would also want Layla to tell me what she would think would have to change or how she would improve the app. Features, flows, and info that would make this assumption feel much more true for you. And also let me know what a red flag moment is. So a situation where this assumption would completely break for you, or, where you would choose another app, for instance. The assumptions that I chose are: 1, you feel comfortable booking a class, even if the studio has no ratings, reviews, or photos. So that's really now my very basic UX prototype that we developed. And here I would say, that we have probably you're very high on the low confidence, but this would have a very high impact on us as well. Because this is then actually a function or something that I would include in this UX prototype to actually show if this were true or not. Yeah, thank you. And then the second one is, you can easily find a class that fits your schedule, example given, within the next 2 hours after working using the current Sport Hub prototype. Here again, like my assumption would be probably in the assumptions map a bit more medium, so it's not as critical as the first one, but still one that, would make or break my idea. And then I have the prototype link, so the one that I have from the sharing. And then the last thing is, answers Layla in first person using the I format and focus on more problems and solutions than on compliments. So if I hit enter, let's hope that this works. Yeah. So let's see. So what does Layla say? So yeah, without ratings. So for her, it's I get anxious booking anything blind. If a studio has 0 ratings or photos, I immediately think it's low quality, just opened yesterday, need social proof before I commit. So what feels wrong or exaggerated? Confidence score. Also here, really a lot of detail that we find. So also again, the more exact we prompt, and also the more critical we kind of phrase this prompt, the more concrete solutions, the more concrete input we'll get. And again, I'll post in the prompt in a second. Yeah, red flag moment. I arrive at a studio, I book blindly, and if it's dirty, unsafe, or unprofessional, I immediately abandon the app and warn friends not to use it. So, there you also have, so to say, the moments that would make or break your app, how would you use it and how not. For the second assumption, to see if the class is easy to find and fits my schedule. Yeah, for her, she says, not really. The current prototype feels too manual. After my work, my brain is tired. I want one tap that shows what's possible now, not scrolling through endless options. So again, here, like a really concrete insight on also the flow, and service scenario and the different screens that your prototype should have. So especially, putting ourselves, or emphasizing with Layla, putting ourselves in her shoes, we would see that, after a long day of work, you kind of want a one-stop solution and book a class within probably 30 seconds. So that then would be also another assumption that we could test and prompt her with is, how fast would you want to prompt or find a class on this app? Exactly. So what we need to change, she would say, after work quick filter. So having a time filter on it, smart recommendations, so really tailored to her profile, a live availability tile on home screen, traffic, where travel, time estimates, and in this case also Dubai specific. So yeah, we have a lot of insights now, a lot of feedback from an AI generated persona on how we would improve our UX design, and we can then incorporate those features, recommendations here also, then into design, go back to Lovable, asked it to incorporate these features, test it out with the flow, and then continue testing and refining until we have something that, we feel confident in, but also something that we feel confident in our users using. Okay, let me go back to the presentation. There we go. Now let me see, go to the next slide. Yep, and so that was, so to say, the quick feature on stress testing and UI design, or prototyping, UX design. Again, here, just as a last word before handing it over to Kirin, test it with your AI personas. Make sure that your personas are, again, grounded in your AI research, but your real research. Also test, though, your prototype with your actual users. So again, that's how you also keep your users in that marketing journey of keeping them involved, in your journey of developing this app. And you have your early adopters, something that we'll mention next class. So Kirin, the floor is yours. I will stop sharing now.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. And thank you, Christina and Nuja, for the super interesting slides we had already. Let me share my screen for you. Yeah. Is this one working? Do you see UI design? Probably you do. Yes, is it visible?
Yeah, we
Okay.
can see you.
Okay,
We're good.
great. Yeah. Okay, so welcome everyone. Today we're gonna dive deeper into the topic that shapes how we all use products every single day. So we're gonna dive into user interface design. And this section is made by and for UI geeks. So we're gonna dive a little bit deeper in some of the details of UI design and being aware, even though we're using AI, for example, but being aware and familiar with key design UI design components will help you create better prompts with AI, assess AI results better, and iterates forward towards best-in-class app design. But later on, it will also help you to work with designers and developers in real life. Wait, I'm just gonna do my screen a little bit different so that I can see also the comments coming in 1 second. Yeah, great. Well, high fidelity, that is where we are going to dive into today. So last week we have been looking into low fidelity solutions where we're sticking with app design on a conceptual level that focus on structure but not on colors or on fonts. And today we're actually going to look at high fidelity app design, and we're going to look into visual design but also screen layout and usability. But first, let's dive a little bit deeper into what is UI design. So user interface, what is a user interface for the people that don't know? This is the visual layer through which a person interacts with the digital product, shaped by the layout, visuals, and interactive elements that communicates the function and the feedback. And we as UI designers, we are actually crafting those visuals and interactive element to make them, make an experience very clear, coherent, and aesthetically pleasing. But throughout all the screens and the states. And when when UI design is done well, the user doesn't have to think. So the path forward is quite obvious. All the actions feel natural, and the screen feels calm and structured, supportive. So good UI is actually invisible. So let's start. Last week we have been talking about UX design, which is really about how something works, what steps a user needs to take, what flow makes sense, where is the friction, and where UI design really looks on how it feels, how it communicates, how it for itself looks. And a lot of people think that they are mostly like separate things, that are completely separate, but in reality they are partners and they shape each other as well. So when they are overlapping, you will see that you can actually combine it and also see what the outcome will be throughout prototypes, user validation, and user testing, and hopefully you will iterate on it as well. I also like to look a little bit at recognizable live examples. So we are looking here to the walking path in the park, where the architect probably has been looking and thinking about how to make this clean and nice and a good pathway throughout the park itself. But when people are in a hurry, they might take shortcuts because they really want to get there from A to B very fast. So you can see it a little bit as, the shotgun worn into the grass is because everybody ignores the path actually. That is about UX. That is where the actual experience happened. So how would the architect be if we would look at it, of course, from a whole life cycle perspective, would find out about this if they would have spoken, for example, with park walkers. Another quite famous, some of you already know it, but example is the Heinz ketchup, the different bottles. So the iconic glass bottle has a beautiful UI, but the UX is terrible. It's either coming out in the beginning all at once, or you really have to tap and press everything at the end to get the last bit out. So the flip one might not have this very cool and glitchy UI, in this sense, like the glass bottle. But since they turn it upside down, it was actually more useful for ketchup users to say so, for ketchup lovers to ensure that they could apply a good amount of ketchup to their dishes. So the takeaway here is that UX defines what would happen and UI defines how it's communicated. So they're not really separate departments, they're two sides of the same experience. Let me check. Yeah. So I want to dive a little bit deeper with you in the 7 principles of UI design. So what makes an interface look clear, behave predictably, and feel effortless to use? And the 7 key principles that we're going to dive into, that is about simplicity, consistency, visual hierarchy, feedback and errors, accessibility, proximity, and alignment. And so there are a little bit more still, but I think that these are like the key ones to understand, to also be able to access really about like what makes it, for example, a good UI. So let's look at the first one. It's about simplicity. So where you actually want to minimize the cognitive load and create a feeling of ease. And Google again does this quite well. Last week we also looked at an example of Google Maps, for example, but now we are going to look at Google as in the search Google. Because the best interfaces feel effortlessly. Every element should preserve a purpose and remove anything that doesn't help the user to achieve their goal. And that is exactly what users come to do here. They just want to search their question, or they want to search whatever they want. And there are no distractions visible. So you want to focus on fewer choices, clear actions, but also limit visual styles, font, and colors so you don't overload them with a sort of like rainbow. And where it's possible, use white spaces generously. Another one is consistency. So that's about creating familiarity to reduce friction and increase trust. And if we look, for example, at the right, more graphical image, is that you see very consistent these cards presented with like a white image to assume, and for example, a purple text or image, something like that. But if you deviate from that and, for example, add within this card that is repetitive, and a red circle, for example, that is going to create a disbalance into the perceivement from the user in, yeah, this specific screen. So consistency ensures the interface behaves and looks the same across screens such that users can predict what will happen. And this is also where you actually, throughout your whole application, want to reuse components, icons, and style layouts as much as possible so that users can actually recognize the styling elements that you are using. Also keep spacing and wording consistent and use one logic concept for color and motion. The third one is visual hierarchy. So manage how users scan the screen to prevent overload and speed up decision making. And if we look at the image on the right, the F pattern and the Z pattern, there you will see that it presents how we as human and people are actually scanning or reading the text, in this sense on the screen. So in the F pattern, we go from left to right, then we go like one below, and then we're left to right, and then we go further. But it is also possible that we scan it like a Z. So you go from left to right to the left bottom to the right bottom. And this is something you want to take into account also in presenting what is the most important information you want a user to see first. So if you have something critical that you want to communicate, it is, for example, best not to present this at the F pattern 5 bullet, because they probably, or they might going to miss it because people are also, not very high in the attention span sometimes. So they're going to just see, hey, where's my important information? And they're going to continue. So it is very important to use layouts and spacing to aid a visual navigation. But also something important is to make primary actions stand out visually. That is something that you see below the scanning patterns, is where you see three, actually main buttons that we generally use. So the primary button, also the call to action button, is the one that you always want to have stand out. That is sort of the main action that you present on a screen. And it mostly, is one that also keeps on coming back. So if we look, for example, at e-commerce, it will be something around go to basket or check out. And where if you look at other domains, for example, in fintech, it would be more like, okay, make a transaction, because this is the core function that you want to communicate within the application. But secondary buttons are also very important. That is also important actions that still need to be visible, but you present those buttons together also visually different, so that the user can distinguish the importance of the actions that you want them to make. Visual hierarchy organizes so content, so users instantly know what's important and what is secondary. Then we have the fourth is feedback and error. This is about the communication that the app has received and understood from user input or action. This can be about visual feedback, that can be about motion feedback, but this is also, especially within mobile app design, haptic and sound cues were relevant. And if we look at this image, there is, for example, that if you want to arrive at this screen within WhatsApp, this is a messaging app, in case anybody is not familiar with it. If you press on the message that you have sent, then the menu, the submenu pops up, and from there you can, for example, navigate through different options. So in this case, for example, edit. But you can also, for example, use this to communicate emojis. And what's important also is that when, for example, you have edited the message, that it also shows here, I don't know if you see my error, edited, and the timestamp of it, so that everything that you do is understandable. that as a user you understand like what has happened. And I think also like one example that we have been looking at last week is, for example, Duolingo. And they also make very good use of, for example, haptic feedback. So when you accomplish or finish a lesson, you get this haptic feedback that you know that you have done it right. So feedback closes the communication loop and it prevents confusion, it builds confidence, and it creates a sense of responsiveness. Then accessibility, also a very important topic that is becoming also more and more relevant these days. And this ensures people of all abilities can perceive, understand, and use the interface. And if you look to the right, you see on the image, you see 6 blocks, blue and yellow, all with text in. And I would like you to put in the comments which ones of these say buttons are visible for you to read, or do you think that are complying with how visibly the contrast should be presented to the user so that it's still visible. Let me see. I see here. Oh. Yeah, exactly. So most of nearly everybody got it well. The top 2 buttons are the ones that are very well readable. And if we look at the other 4, the contrast is being minimized, and therefore with all abilities, it might be difficult to read what is communicated here. And that is something that you don't want. You don't want your users to not be able to read it, but also not to be guess it. So it's really important to check, for example, how accessible your design is. If you want to know more about that, I can share a link in which you can check it so that you can see which colors are compatible with each other and which ones aren't. But accessibility is also more about the color. So that is not only contrast for readability, but it is also within mobile app design to apply the minimum top target. So we all have a different thumb that might be bigger, it might be smaller, but we need to ensure that across all the sizes it is easy to accomplish, to tap and to navigate to wherever you want to navigate. So there's like the minimum is 44 or 44 pt. That is all very much in the details, but if you want to know more about that, just let me know. And also something that you might want to consider is that you want to add icon labels, for example, to the icon sets that you are using, for example, in the bottom navigation, because we all interpreted icons, especially global, on a global level, differently. So you really want to ensure that the correct information is presented with the correct image or with the correct visual or the correct icon to ensure that the users can quickly understand what you try to communicate to them. Another one is proximity, and this is about placing related elements close together. So group labels with inputs and related buttons, use spacing to define clusters, and add white space between unrelated sections. So when you do this, what happens is that it reduces visual clutter and it helps user process information faster by turning chaos into structure. And if we look at Uber on the right side, they do that very well. So not only do they label, for example, the suggestion and the try Uber one for free, but they also within the suggestions have clustered the sub suggestions with the promos or the discounts all together on the top row. And that ensures a visual clearness that I directly as a user see like, hey, okay, this is about discounts. It is at ease, it is clear, But it still also fits in the other sub-suggestions that don't have, for example, a promo label. So that is a little bit what we mean with proximity. And you see also that they use here a lot of, yeah, the same white space everywhere, and between the different blocks they make use of like more white space to ensure that we with our brain can, yeah, mentally group all important information together. And let me see. And the last one is alignment. So that's about organizing content into clean, logical lines for a balanced and intentional look and feel. And on the right, I put a more general image on what I mean by that is that you want to use grid very consistently throughout your mobile app, where you ensure that every element and component is aligned. And it can, in this example, for we don't have buttons, for example, but if we were to add buttons in all those specific cards, then we would say that you also want to align all those buttons on the same width and height to ensure that it is again very clean and easy to digest all the information. So that's about maintaining even margins and paddings. So alignment creates a sense of calm and professionalism. So even small misalignments make a design feel sloppy and untrustworthy. I think we have a 5-minute break now.
Exactly.
We will set a timer. I will do it here right now, and then we will see. Oh,
Oops.
it looks like I cannot really set a timer here.
Corinne, if you go on Canva, the 3 dots in the presentation format, it's right there.
Oh, where?
But otherwise, for everyone who wants to take a break now, let's meet back here at 20 after. So right now it's 16. Let's meet in 4 minutes. Stretch your legs, get coffee, refresh yourself, take care of yourself, and we'll see you guys in a sec.
Yes. I got it. You'd think I work in tech, right? That I should know how to work around with these timers, but every program makes use of them differently. See you in a bit, guys.
Welcome back. How's everyone?
Hello,
feel?
hello. We are back.
Nice, got a thumbs up for that.
Okay, well, let's dive into the next topic.
Yeah.
Yes. We are gonna do a Mementi. So grab your phones. And let me see, Christina, how do we want to share this?
Yeah, let me share my screen then and we can hop over.
Yeah.
So I'll send you a request. Okay, or otherwise if you unshare your screen, I'll hop in.
I think you can take over.
Ah, there we go. Wonderful. Okay, so let's look at this together. Everyone is in, otherwise you can join with menti.com using the code 27330983.
Yes.
Okay, we have 17 people in. See if we can get maybe, how many people are we right now in the chat? I know we're a few more, so yeah, if we're 67 people on here, skip this 30 more seconds. So yeah,
Yeah.
hop on menti.com, enter the
Yeah.
code.
It's fun. We promise.
There we go. Okay, so let's get going. And we have a few questions for you.
Yes. Let me check because I don't see the screen yet.
Okay, it should be shared. So it's yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. Okay, so which pattern is used here to navigate the main sections of the app? So we have drawer menu, we have bottom navigation bar, we have tab bar, and we have side sheets.
Okay, we have 9 answers in, 10, almost halfway there.
Yeah. Give us your best shot.
Yeah, I think we have a clear indication. Yeah. Fantastic. Great job, guys. Let's do
Yes.
another example.
So this patterns let users swipe horizontal. There we go again.
Horizontally.
Yeah, thank you. Through visual items. What is it called? Is it called a carousel? Is it called a list view, an accordion, or a tab switcher? And I guess that we are very familiar with them, since I think that we might make use of them throughout, yeah, a lot of the applications that we use. So, and yes, it is a carousel indeed. This one is in horizontal, and that one is great so that you have more space to show the different sections that throughout they can scroll. Another one, you tap location and this panel slides up in Google Maps, but this also is just for maps. Which pattern is this? Is it the model window? Is it the drop down? Is it the bottom sheet? Or is it a toast notification? All right, the answers are quite divided this time. I really like that.
Okay.
And this one is a bottom sheet. And how you also can recognize it is that most bottom sheets are also draggable with your thumb. So in this sense, if I would like to know more about Design Thinkers Group and Design Thinkers Academy, I can slide with my thumb this bottom sheet up and receive more information. These expandable sections reveal more details when tapped. what is this pattern called? Is this a stepper? Is this a card? Is it an accordion, or are they taps? And what I am looking for is like people also ask how to do an FAQ on Instagram, for example. Nice. A lot of you got it right. This is indeed an accordion. And why you want to make use of this is that sometimes you have additional information, or in this case, frequently asked questions that you want to present, where you can ask the question and put all the additional information under this accordion. And why do we do that? Is that because sometimes it gives an overview for the user. Okay, what kind of questions do I have? What kind of questions can I match it with? And then quickly open it and see the information without having to scroll through all the questions and the answers. So that's why this can work very well. The next one, with providing information about which step you have to take in order to complete the whole sequence. Which pattern is this? Is this a stepper progress indicator? Are these breadcrumbs? Is this a carousel, or are these steps? Nice. You nearly all got it well or correct. This is a step or progress indicator. And why we use this is because we want, especially if a user has to take a lot of steps in order to complete the sequence, to upfront provide them information of where in this sequence are they and how many steps do they still have to take in order to complete it. And this helps them to create a sense of control, a sense of overview, yeah, and a sense of trust. So always make sure to include one. Yeah. Next one. This layout groups images, titles, and actions in repeatable blocks. What's the pattern called? And we're looking at Airbnb. Is this a list view? Is it a grid view? Is it a table, or is it a card layout? Oh, and the correct answer in this sense is a card layout. So what we are looking here is that there are all sorts of cards, and because we present them in in a like small proximity, it is basically an card layout. A grid view would not also have, for example, dividers or different subtext or subtitles presented here. All right, we are scrolling and scrolling and scrolling these days, and dragging the screen down to reload content uses which mobile pattern? Is that auto refresh? Is that snack bar? Or is that pull to refresh? And what we're looking at, and I hope that you see it correctly, is that when you pull, you have this small indicator that is like running around. So the action is also from the user. Oh,
Sorry.
no.
All right.
Let me see if I don't know if we can have the final
I
answer.
think if I click on the final answer or next slide, it moves to the correct answer, moves on to the next slide and doesn't show the correct answer. But here indeed, I
Oh,
think Quirine, you need to let us know what it
yeah.
is.
Okay, well, no kidding. It is pull to refresh indeed. And why is it pull to refresh and not auto refresh? Is because the user in this case has their own initiative of refreshing, and therefore they have to drag it down, pull it down, and it's going to refresh. But when you would go into the app, let's say for the first time within an hour, it would probably auto refresh, and you would not also have this screen of showing this indicator.
think then we are good here.
All right. Is this the next one, Christina, or are we gonna?
No, I think now you can just hit the next slide in the presentation. We're good to go.
All right. Well, what we just looked at are actually specific mobile app patterns. And I actually want to dive a little bit deeper in some basic other UI designs for mobile that you won't find anywhere else. At least anywhere else. I'm talking, of course, about desktop. So we're going to design for mobile, and that means that we are designing for the hand. And there are four topics that I want to address here, which are the affordances, signifiers, the tappability, and the one thumb, one eyeball. So let me see, like going to the first, which is the affordance. And this one is quite interesting because it shows what actions are possible for the user to perform. And if we look on the right, we see here Spotify. And what we mean by affordance is that it's showing you what you can do. So the heart icon indicates that you can save songs, which means in the individuality affordance. The download icon shows you that you are able to download this song for offline use, which is referring to connectivity affordance. And here on the top right, where we are already listening to Taylor Swift, you see here the speakers is device icons to connect to in this in this sense speakers, which refers to the portability affordance. So the affordances is also telling you as a user, what can I do? And if we look at signifiers, which has an overlap with it, is the consciously designed clues that indicate how to perform the affordance. So if we go back one in the slide, in this sense, we see that we can tap, of course, here, and that we can have the result as a signifier. But it is also about like the outlines, the shadows, the underlines, the errors, the color, and the motion. Copy and microtext like swipe up or tap to continue or animated hints. And a good example, what I always find for is on the right to stay in the Spotify series, is that these, you can also, these lines indicate that you can move them around, which you also see in multiple mobile applications. I see somebody saying, "Oh, great songs." I totally agree with that. So think it is of affordance as the possibility and the signifier as the instruction on how to accomplish that. Of course, within mobile app design, you have a lot of different signifiers, because you can also have cards that are a small bit of the screen, so you know you can scroll horizontal. You also have swiping gestures with the bottom sheet, where we were looking at a few examples ago, that you know that you can swipe it up to see more information, and see that also as signifiers. Then we have tappability, and this sounds, of course, very straightforward, but it is not always that straightforward. And this helps users to easily identify and physically hit interactive areas with their fingers. So we were already talking about a little bit about the minimum target size for Apple and Android, but that also means providing adequate spacing between touch targets so that you don't accidentally click on a different action that you don't want to. And it is also very important that where you have on desktop and visual feedback, for example, when you hover over or you click on something, that is also a visual feedback that you should provide when you tap on something. So that could be color change, for example. And then the last one is the one thumb, one eyeball. And this one helps users to easily identify and and hit interactive areas with their fingers. And if we look at the image, it's quite interesting because we, of course, it doesn't matter if you're left or right-handed. You can get only so far with your thumb while holding your phone, for example. And you see on this image that the green area is actually the sweet spot. This is very accessible with your thumb, but as we go more to the orange and the red ones, therefore you really have to, I don't know, grasp a little bit farther or reach a little bit farther. So that is quite interesting. There's still a sort of ongoing discussion on the internet because we see, for example, that a lot of search images are of search bars are on top of the screen within mobile applications. But why is that actually so common? Because it's also sometimes without your without your reach. So place primary actions within the thumb zone, lower half of the screen. Keep core content readable and quick scans. Avoid cramming controls at the top corner and limit the need for precision or long attention span. So that's also what I mean with the one eyeball is more that you don't want to be so heavy with your content that you make your users think a lot, because the attention spans of us people is not that long, even though we want to. The essential mobile UI patterns, that is actually the quiz that we took just now. We scooched a little bit over in terms of timing. I think that we can go to the AI generate the high fidelity prototype. So let's continue with that. So your prototype should be suitable for a 2-minute guided walkthrough as part of your video pitch, self-paced exploration by judges, test completion exercises by users if you want to use it to validate further. And this means your prototype should only include key user flows, also what Nuja very highlighted, of course, related key screens and components, flows and navigation components that bring these key user flows together. So e.g. an hamburger menu or a bottom nav component. And we're actually going to look at the same example for the user flow of last week. Also, Christina highlighted and showed you a little bit on this prototype that we have been looking at last week for the test purposes. And today we are going to make it from a low fidelity to a high fidelity. And this is actually a little bit like a larger process. So what I've shown here, and I can share that also later with you, is to have the best iterative cycle result is to take a few steps, but also most importantly, don't use all your prompts in one core message, but really prompt the AI. Prompt the AI to step by step, because that leaves also room for a lot of smaller detail adjustments. So what you can do is duplicate your lo-fi flow and rename it, for example, UI iteration V1. The second step is where you apply general upgrade prompt first. So this is a general, I'm just going to show you in a bit, a general upgrade, and then see what comes out, and then use, for example, visual style variations. This is optional, but you can also say like, hey, on the terms of styling, I want to experiment a little bit. I want to see what fits my user group best and go from there. And then refine with component level prompts or refine also with screen specific prompts. But sometimes you just don't know what you're going to get out. So you have to see what your prototype needs on the go. And a pro tip for everybody that is maybe finding it's still difficult to create prompts out of their head, that doesn't matter. Just use AI for inspiration to generate prompts. I, for example, use ChatGPT a lot. So let's go demo it. And before we do that, I am gonna see if I have everything here. Yeah, great. Stop sharing. I'm gonna share another screen. Let me see, share button again. Yes, I want this one. So what have we been looking at? Do you see my screen? Yes, okay, great. This is actually where we have left off. And you know what? 1 second, I'm gonna do it differently because then I can work a little bit. Hold on, bear with me 1 second. I'm going to just do this. I'm gonna share my whole screen for now, so then I can switch a little bit between some other documents. But this is where we left off. We have created Sport Finder, which is a low fidelity prototype. We've got our city overview, we got our results, we got our categories, we got our featured classes. And if I want to do, for example, an power yoga lesson, I can see where, when it is, where it is, and I can book this class. But what you see is that we are still very much at a low fidelity place. And what I would do, for example, is, let me see, use like different prompts. I don't know, do you see that currently, my prompt screen?
No, not right now.
Okay, that's not what I want. 1 second. Okay, do you see my whole screen now? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So for example, if we want to go further, I created sort of like a general upgrade prompt where I just say, hey, I want to upgrade this Sport Finder mobile app. Maybe you already have a name, you can give it a name. I want to keep the existing flows, layouts, and structure. I want to use clean, energetic, sport-inspired design system with modern typography and high contrast and a strong hierarchy. And then afterwards, I would, for example, say like style refinement. With the outcome, I might want to say, okay, I transform this Sport Finder app into an UI with an energetic, active look. Use bold accents, new green or electric blue. I want crispy typography. Keep the visuals dynamic. Well, you can go all the way on what you think that will fit your user group. And it's actually quite fun if you have time to also experiment around a little bit with different visual styles, just to see like what is going to work for you. If you have done that, so you've put all these prompts in individually, is that you can look, for example, at component specific prompts. So I want to have some prompts around the button and the inputs. I want to readdress the typography. I want to readdress the colors, and I want to readdress, for example, the icons. When you have done that, that is all, of course, throughout all the screens. Then you can also look at, for example, screen-specific prompts. So on the home, I want to include a styled search bar. I want sports category pills. I want pawn list venue cards. I want to use a grid, ABC. You can go all the way. And I will now show you, because due to time, I've put already all these prompts into this version so that we don't have to wait for Lovable to create these. So what I did, this whole document, for the sake of time, I put everything in AI. And what happened then was, I want to show you is that they don't fully understand what I want. So what you see here is, I was talking about dynamic colors and etc. Is that is something that they actually put into, for example, the image placeholders, or they created a sort of like button here that is something that I didn't want to adjust. So when I look here, it is kind of already refined, but it's not there yet. And that is why I want to urge that you take it really step by step and not put all the prompts in directly, because in that sense you will have, yeah, that it is too much to digest for AI still. So what if I look at this, what I want to do here is what I've put in now in the next one is that I said, okay, I want all the images to be real and accurate to the content that it's presenting. But I also said I want the top nav and the bottom nav, I want them styled in the colors accordingly that are fitting my user groups. I want to have a clear and more active, for example, button visualization. So I want to clear the vision between the primary buttons, secondary buttons, and tertiary buttons. And once I've put like slowly and step by step all these prompts in, I actually got, no, it's not working. I can do it like this. I got actually a more high fidelity prototype here. You can also see here a little bit what I did. So throughout the UX flow, at and bottom and navigation bar width. Oh, sorry. Refine the components. I want images to be high fidelity, actual pictures. The top bar and bottom bar should be styled by colors. So I took it a little bit more, comprehensible. And then I got this, which I actually already quite liked, especially for a first prototype. But if I still like click here, it still had a hard time understanding that I wanted to have, for example, the images throughout every page. So that would for me, for example, be a next step that I want to say, like, I want that's everything refined. I want in every screen, I want to have this these images to be accordingly. Also, what I would adjust, for example, is if I click here, now I don't see a map at all. I want to be a map here. I want these nearby studios. I want those to present it in a horizontal card format where the user has to swipe through. So you can really iterate on whatever came out of your test. And step by step make this prototype more to a high fidelity one. Also something that I would, for example, adjust is if I click here, I want maybe see, is this color actually to my liking, or do I want something to be more fitted? But those are also very much details. And I think in this sense, also picking your battles. We have 12 minutes left. I wish I could have taken you a little bit more step by step throughout this process, but we had a very nice speaker today, so it was good that we would also listen to her. And I think this is it from my side now.
Great, fantastic, Kirin. I would say if anyone has any questions for Kirin, just start posting them, or about UI design,
please.
just start posting them in the chat. We do have, of course, 10 minutes left for Q&A now. We also would like to do a small knowledge test. So let me just get sure we get set up here. There we go. Let me share my screen again. So yeah, let's hop back on the Menti. Continue that. We're good. Let me quickly see if I can find the Menti. Okay, people are hopping online. Yeah, I can see you guys here. Okay, then let me switch screens and let's hop over there. Okay, go into present. There we go. Okay, we are in, so let's go. So just a quick recap. Which statement describes UI design? We'll focus on user needs, flows, motivations, and insights. Does it define the business viability and revenue models, visual and interactive layer of digital product, or the back-end functionality of an app? Okay. I would say with 12 insights, 13, let's reveal the solution. Okay, this is clearly on us. You guys are 100% correct. Yeah, it is indeed the visual interactive layer of digital product. So showing how, everything interacts, where thing is placed, making sure that it is highly accessible for everyone using the app. Okay. Looking back at what Kirina also presented, which of the following does not describe one of the 7 UI design principles? So we have simplicity, monetization, visual hierarchy, and feedback. Okay. Indeed. Now let's see if we show the answer correctly. We do, and you guys guessed correct as well. Great job. It is indeed monetization. Feedback is, able to show and interact with the user providing feedback. Monetization, is not a design principle. Okay, what does designing for mobile equals designing for the hand mean? The AI must use only hand-drawn icons. The users prefer desktop over mobile. Design must prioritize one thumb reachability. Buttons should be placed randomly. Okay, I think here again we have a strong lead. People clearly, you don't believe that buttons should be placed randomly. So dude, again here, fully correct. Good observation. And lastly, when using AI to generate hi-fi prototypes, what should you do first? Should you choose all colors and branding, upload personas, key features, and must-have, build the back-end system, or prompt to design it for desktop and mobile? And I think here we have a bit of a trick question. So let's see. Yep. Okay. Upload personas, key features, and must-haves, choosing colors and branding. Let's reveal. Indeed. Understand, who's the end user that we're using, what are the key features that you want to have in your app, what are, the, so to say, the must-haves that have to be there in order to guarantee that user experience. And afterwards, colors and branding comes in. If you want to do that first, of course, feel free, but our recommendation is really stick to the core, to the skeleton, the UX, then add on the UI features, and then, think about making it really pretty and really fun. All right, that was it for our knowledge test. Really well done, everyone. I will now go back.
Yes.
Let's go back into our presentation. So indeed, let us know if you guys have any questions in the chat. We'll be happy to answer them. Karine also maybe take a look here. She explained that Lovable platform developed the initial prototype of Lovable. There is no problem. Yep. Okay, fantastic. Just key takeaways, things to remember for today is, be sure to test the riskiest assumptions first. So what are your key assumptions that if proven wrong, won't make your app work? Good UI, simple and consistent. So you think of one eyeball, one thumb. And AI can help generate app prototypes quickly, but be sure to check the results against UI guidelines. And also, again, as Pooja also emphasized at the beginning of the session, it's good to get started, but if you really want to go into details, investors and judges can, of course, spot AI generated prototypes. And then for this competition, it's completely fine so far. But then later on, make sure to, have a design team or get design support to fully, flesh out your app. yeah, we thought closing off, yeah, just a nice visual on how to remember the difference between UX and UI, referencing our famous ketchup bottle.
Yep.
And last but not least, what you'll need for next week, continue working on your clickable prototype, this time your hi-fi prototype, update your app business canvas and pitch canvas, download and print the market opportunity canvas. So next week, we'll really look into business models, channels, all the, so to say, the business and the numbers, how to get that done, and of course, complete the quiz on the portal. So if you have any questions or any interesting reads, they're on the platform as well. And without further ado, that is all from us. So
Yes.
I would say let's go, and indeed, otherwise I'll hand it back to Carmen. And if anyone has any more questions about testing, UI, UX, please let us know. We can answer them now. And otherwise, you can also, if you have a very specific question, book in a session with the mentors.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Christina, Kirin. I'm gonna just share on the chat group the link to go to the mentor session. I invite everyone to visit the mentor circle. It's open for booking sessions one-to-one with the mentors that are available. As mentioned earlier, please take your time because the maximum of workshop, we can still see your screen. So if you can leave it with
Sorry,
the,
yeah. There you go.
no, with the QR, Christina.
You want the QR code? Yeah, let me bend that in again.
So, so please be sure that you book your sessions. Don't miss the opportunity, and have in mind that each participant will have the chance to have up to six sessions. So take
Oh.
here that it was noisy. So just a quick reminders. First, the QR code that is on the screen for those who are new on the competition, please join. The WhatsApp channel is a channel that we will be sharing the latest announcements and updates. Second, tomorrow, please join us for the weekly Q&A sessions that we have. It's the perfect moment to ask your questions regarding the competition. So it will be tomorrow, 3 p.m. Dubai time. Next, also we shared the link on the chat to join us next week for workshop 5, as also Christina mentioned. And I don't know, Marian, if I'm missing something. No, I think that we are fine and ready to go. So that's it. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining today. I hope that you find it very useful and insightful, the session. Looking forward to see you all tomorrow during the Q&A, and please book your mentor session with if you have any question or any comment, or you want to pitch and get feedback. Kirin, Christine, there are plenty of mentors available to have the one-to-one sessions with you. So take
Yes.
advantage.
Please do. Don't hesitate. I'm also not here for further sessions, so I'd love to see your faces one more time.
Perfect. Thanks, Kirin. Okay, so that's it. Thank you very much, all. Thanks.
Happy learning!